Kakadosh Bokeror, we're just continuing with Halachot of Siman Samech Bet. We were speaking about putting on special clothing for Shabbat. Now the question is, does a person need to have new or different shoes on Shabbat or not? That's the question. We spoke about clothing. What about shoes? So the Rav Pe'alim, the Ben Ish Chai, he actually wants to come and say that you don't have to have new shoes or different shoes on Shabbat, and he brings a proof from Birkot HaShachar that we were just learning. What's the proof? He comes and he says, 1 second, we make the bracha Malbish Arumim. Does Malbish Arumim include the shoes? No. How do we know it doesn't include the shoes? Because we come and we make another bracha, Sha'asali Kol Tzorki. And that's a bracha that you won't say whether it's going to be on Kippur or on Tisha B'Av. There's a gown that you would say at nighttime because you could still do it at nighttime when you put them on. So says the Ben Ish Chai, the fact that you have a separate bracha, one for shoes and one for clothing. So if it says that you're supposed to change your clothing for Shabbat, because that's the entire concept of v'chibato masod rechecha, v'chibato with different clothing. So therefore, at the end of the day, you don't need different shoes. Different shoes is not considered a clothing. That's what the Ben Ish Chai comes and he says, and he brings a proof from the Yerushalmi. The Yerushalmi says, Lav orche devar nasha miha veleteren sandalin chal lechola v'chal leshabata. He says it's not normal to have two different shoes, one for chol and one for Shabbat. So based upon this Yerushalmi, comes the Ben Ish Chai and he says, you do not need to have special shoes for Shabbat. However though, right, a lot of the Achronim, they actually come and they argue on the Ben Ish Chai. Rav Ovadia comes and also here Rav David Yosef is bringing down, first of all, it depends how you learn the Yerushalmi. Some people learn the Yerushalmi that it's not actually a statement, it's a question, which means, what, is it not normal that they're going to have a different shoes for Chol and different shoes for Shabbat? Now if you read it with a question mark, so now it's a completely different explanation in the Yerushalmi. But besides that, comes Rav David Yosef and he says, 1 second, what is the beracha of Malbish Arumim? He says when you use the terminology Arumim, which on the shoes, because at the end of the day it wasn't included in Malbish Arumim. Malbish Arumim is even if a person without clothing but he wears shoes, he's still without clothing, he's still Arum. What does that have to do with it? The fact that he has shoes. So therefore they come and they say because of that, it has nothing to do with the concept that you have two separate berachot, and therefore you do not really need to do it. You can't bring a proof from there that you don't need to do it. However, though, after bringing different machlokot, right, or different shitot, whether it is considered clothing or not considered clothing, Rav Ovadia comes and he says the ikar is that you do not need to be a miyached shoes, but you should just come and polish them and make them new, and then by doing so, it's like it's parim chadasho ba'ulakan, it's like new shoes which are coming. And he brings down a lot of achronim. He says that's a minhag by a lot, and that was even Rav Eliashiv also was the same thing, but also that was what Rav Ovadia Yosef Zecher Tzadik V'Kishul also used to do the same thing, which means that again, technically, Midat Chasidut is, you have separate shoes for Shabbat, but even if you're not going to have separate shoes for Shabbat, because you don't need, but at least come and you polish the shoes for Lichot Shabbat Kodesh, and then it's going to be a new concept of the Shabbat. It's also going to be good to have a talit shel mitzvah special for Shabbat. You also have other things also getting out of it, whether it's actually folding it or others as well, because once it's going to be miyuchal Shabbat, so you're not preparing from Shabbat to Chol, it's going to be from Shabbat to Shabbat, which is the Rabbeinu Chananel over there in the Gemara, which is mashma that you're allowed to do that without any problem whatsoever. And the last halacha was the halacha that we mentioned last time, which is basically brought out in the Mishnah Berurah as well, that the women also have the obligation of wearing nice clothing or different clothing, lichot Shabbat Kodesh, and the mitzvah for them is to put it on during Adlakat Nerot, and then after, right after putting on their new clothing or their different clothing for Shabbat, that's when they're going to come and they're going to do the Adlakat Nerot of Shabbat.